Towns and urban centers occupy a built environment of a minuscule proportion of the world's land surface, but utilize well over 75% of the world's resources and discharge similar amounts of waste, and argue for the importance of collaboration and sound approaches in physical town planning, urban design, and architectural building practices. Noteworthy is the realization that the human species is involved in an unprecedented stage in its evolution, whereby it is turning itself into an urban species with large cities becoming a primary habitat. Indeed, in a few years from now, over 50% of the world's population will be domiciled in cities. Thus, city growth is changing the face of the earth and the very condition of humanity. Our focus on this segment of the politicals will be town planning in developing cities. And our guest is the National President, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, NITP, Town Planner Dr. Ogbonna Chime. I guess that's what the TPL is.
That's what it means. Really.
You're welcome to Evening Show on
Thank you.
Signature TV.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right away, I will be asking if it is needful to actually plan a town. I mean, anyone can get a space anywhere, build whatever he desires or he can afford to build. Or is it not so?
Planning is as important as eating.
Oh.
If you fail to plan, you have failed woefully. It doesn't matter the level of human existence. It requires planning. So it's as good as life.
Okay, so I don't know. If someone is in a developed city or a metropolis such as Enugu, it is expected that the person approaches a town planner. Let's start this conversation really with those who are in rural areas. Do they also need to plan before building?
Yes.
Okay.
Every part of the world requires planning. Be the place urban, be it rural, just like it said, everywhere requires planning. Like I did say, if you don't plan, you've already failed. Because the essence of planning is to look at the resources available to you and then plan on how to use these resources. So that even when you have expired as a human being, there will still be enough resources for those who are yet to come. And that's what we refer to as sustainability. Planning guarantees sustainability.
Now, because we have town planners, and because there's an organization, there's some sort of union championing the cause of town planners and, just a body of town planners. And so I'm going to ask you, as a nation, how far has Nigeria fared in terms of town planning? How well are we doing?
We've gone nowhere.
Oh.
I must confess to you. It will shock you to hear that what we use in this country is the 1946 Town and Country Planning Law, promulgated by the colonial masters, that of course served their interest till date, be it in the old Western region, be it in the old Eastern region, be it in the old Northern region. But in 1992, the Nigerian government, in its own wisdom, decided to take Nigeria away from that colonialism in planning and establish what we call Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Law of 1992. Now, Cap 138 of Federal Laws of Nigeria. But from 1992 to date, how many years? It will shock you that even the federal government that promulgated that law is not practicing the law. That might shock you. But the provision of that law, the federal government was supposed to establish what we call National Fiscal Planning Commission at the national level. At the regional level, you have regional, urban, and regional planning bodies that manage the physical environment at that level. At the state, you're supposed to have what we call State Urban and Regional Planning Board. At the local government, you have town planning authorities. But from 1992 to date, ask me how many states have implemented this law. Ask me how far the federal government has also implemented the law it promulgated by itself. That is why I said we are not serious about urban and regional planning law. I remember, world over, it is always said that any government that is not friendly with urban and regional planning, or if you like, town planning, will hardly be friendly with the people it governs. Because this is the profession that says where what should be, and then give reasons why those things should be where they should be, and always in the interest of the people, serving the welfare of the people. So that is why I'm not saying it. It is a general view that any government that has no interest in urban and regional planning has no real interest in the people it governs.
Let's criticize something now.
Yeah.
I need to understand what we do in terms of erecting structures as against what should be done.
Well, first of all, I must thank you. First of all, for you to establish a settlement that is livable, where people can stay, work, play, interact with others without conflict of interest, there must be what we call a master plan for such a settlement. And usually, in civilized world, no settlement can take off without first of all being predated by a planned master plan that will govern what that settlement should be, how it should work, who should come in, who should not come in. If you come in, what should you be doing? So the master plan prepares the ground for every settlement, so that you don't come in and begin to do whatever thing you like. You live in accordance with the provisions of the master plan. You build in accordance with the provisions of the master plan. The master plan always has some principal components. You have, of course, the residential area where human beings are supposed to reside and attend to their duties. You have the industrial aspect of the master plan, where factories are built to enable those residents to have a place to work on. You have the commercial areas where you have markets and so many other commercial activities. You have institutional uses where schools are built. All these are pre-planned so that you don't come in and begin to build a house anywhere you find, right? And that is why, to ensure that the master plan is properly implemented, you have development control officers. In Enugu State, that duty is performed by the town planning authorities, and of course in recent time, Enugu Capital Development Authority. But ask me, how many town planning authorities are functional in Enugu State? How many town planning authorities are functional in Kano State? How many town planning authorities are functional in Bayelsa State? There are some of these little things that improve the quality of the society we live in, but we neglect them. And that is the major difference between a developed country and a developing country like ours. But our own is that we have refused to change. The professionals are there to give us advice, pieces of advice, on how to go about issues. But we don't listen. And mark you, the land area we have is not inexhaustible. It is limited in supply. If you remember elementary economics, the 4 major factors of production, land is one of them. And it is the only one that is limited in supply. And if any factor is to be taken care of properly, that factor in the cost of production should be land. And who manages the land? The town planners. Right? Because I want to tell you one thing. Any small space you have, any small settlement you see today is a potential urban area. So if you don't begin to plan early enough, if you don't begin to prepare a master plan for such a small area, it will go out of hand. And the cost of adjustment is more expensive than the cost of doing it the first order.
That's what is being experienced in some parts of Enugu State,
Okay.
Enugu Metropolis,
Yeah.
where there's been quite a lot of demolitions in an attempt to expand some roads. And so I'd like to know if what you're talking about that we are doing wrongly is perhaps the reason that we're having this demolition now.
Of course, yes.
It means that there was an already existing plan for some areas. What I'm talking about actually is not peculiar to Enugu, okay? And other big cities, even Lagos State, at some point had recently actually had that same challenge. So I don't know if what happens is that we have already existing plans, but people get a portion of a piece of land and just build without recourse to the laid plan, what we call master plan.
Yeah, really, Enugu has a peculiar case.
Oh.
During the time of Jim Wobodo, His Excellency Chief Jim Wobodo, as the governor of Old Anambra State, at that time, he decided to prepare a master plan for each of the senatorial zones of the Old Anambra State. That was a very wise decision. But because of the cost involvement, he decided to start with the state capital, Enugu. He appointed consultants. And the master plans, the preparation of master plan was in progress. In fact, the final draft of that master plan was ready by 1982. And by the rule of the game, for a master plan to be the master plan it should be, it must be adopted by the State House of Assembly and then signed into law by His Excellency the Governor. But one unfortunate thing happened. That piece, that masterpiece, could not be signed into law because the military struck.
Oh.
And because the military struck, I can tell you that till date, Enugu has no master plan as a city. But that is not to say that no planning activities was going on in Enugu State. I want to make reference to the demolitions going on. If a stranger comes into Enugu, for instance, we had our international conference here in Enugu in 2024. Most of my colleagues were surprised.
Your association?
Nigerian Institute of Town Planners.
Okay.
Many of my colleagues from other parts of the country were surprised. Because Enugu is a city you cannot be held up by any traffic. You know, you have options. It's just like a planned city. And this is where I must commend our early town planners in Enugu State. Old Eastern region, let me say. Yes, there was no master plan, but we had incremental expansion of the city. And
the credit goes to the town planners?
Of course, yes. And each of these new development had a plan, a layout plan, not a master plan. And each layout plan is linked to the other. You understand? So that you wouldn't get stuck up, maybe because you can't find a road to access the next part of the city. Enugu developed as if it had a master plan, but it never had. These layout plans, I'll give you an example. Along Nike Lake Resort Hotel Road, we had several layout plans, if you like, residential schemes. We had the community estate, which is the very first one you find when you get to that first filling station as you join it from Enugu Onitsha Express, Pinox. By your left, you have the community estate. That one was designed to be a low density residential area. After it, you have the extension. That one was medium density residential scheme. Okay? Opposite that one by the right, you had the one we call Community Estate Extension Phase 2. In that Phase 2, it was designed by one of the oldest town planners in the whole eastern region, late Dr. Town Planner O.C. Ezako. Zental Ezako was from Enugu State. Because of the experience he had, he guided that development in such a manner that if you want to drive out from your street, you don't bust into Nike Lake Resort Hotel Road. Rather, he provided what we call a service road that ran parallel to Nike Lake Resort Hotel Road. In that case, if you are driving out from your street in that scheme, you wouldn't just jump into Nike Lake. You enter the service lane, and then at a point, you'll be able to join the Nike Lake. Okay? At a point, some people started agitating that that road was not necessary. The service lane was not necessary, that it was waste of land. They approached officers at the then Enugu Eastern Planning Authority to vary the scheme, that is to change the scheme. And what did they want? To close that road and use it for shops and so on and so forth. At a point, the officers rejected their proposals. But after a while, you know, when one officer goes, another officer comes. They succumbed to the pressure. And that street was converted into shops. So, as the present administration wants to expand that road, many people are crying, they are destroying my shop. That place was not meant for shops. For those of us we know, we don't have any sympathy for them.
But then again, the role of ignorance. Probably the owners of the shops were not aware that, of this. What transpired.
There is no ignorance in law. The fact of the matter is that everybody knew that that used to be a road. It was out of greed that these land sellers will want to convert everything into money. So, but for those who understand, they violated the rules and they are suffering for what they did.
We have heard people say that one administration approves a structure to be erected in some places and another administration comes up to bring down such structures. You know, what actually has gone wrong in this case?
See, the reason is that we don't have a master plan. Because if you have a master plan, you cannot go into violation of that master plan. Even if you're mad, you can't do that. Because like I told you, the State House of Assembly has to adopt it as a law. And it will now be signed by His Excellency the Governor into law. So before you change anything, just like ordinary planning schemes, you have to go back to that same government to effect any change. But because we don't have any master plan prepared ahead of time, people gamble. And sometimes even when schemes are prepared, like the one I just gave you an example, people intentionally violate it. But the price is always expensive. And let me also inform you, my dear sister, any structure that is not approved by government is no house, is no building. It is an illegal structure.
Who approves the ones that are eventually pulled down and when certain kind of development is expected to come to a place?
No.
Government?
No, let me come. This is why we are talking about implementation of the Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Law of 1992. In this law, there's no escape route for anybody who violates it. In the 1946 Town and Country Planning Law, the one I told you was promulgated by the colonial masters, somebody could build on the road. Okay? It will be clear that he has built on the public road. That law did not allow anybody to go and demolish it until you've taken the contravenor to court. It is only when the court finishes its jurisdiction and says it should be removed. That's the only time you remove it. But in the law I'm referring to, the 1992 Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Law, there's a provision in that law that even if you build on the road by the night or over the weekend, or build right inside water over the weekend, in the night, and so on and so forth, that the planning authority has the right to pull it down without recourse to law. I mean, without recourse to law courts. You understand? And this is to tell you the major difference between what we want implemented and what is being implemented. The people who drafted the 1992 Urban and Regional Planning Laws are Nigerians. We know ourselves. We know our peculiarities. We understand that we don't have respect for law. In that case, there was that provision that even if you do it in the night, maybe build too close to a railway line, or, like I said, right inside water, you are at the mercy of the town planning authority, because once it is spotted, they will remove it. The idea is to ensure that our people don't take unnecessary risk, because if at the end of the day anybody dies, that person that is dead is a Nigerian, and we don't want to lose any life.
I know that this one for now may not be majorly from you, but you may be aware of what's going on with people erecting a structure and way into the construction. I think is that usually the town capital, if it's within the metropolis, is the Capital Territory Development Authority that marks it down, and then eventually after some time the construction continues and is completed.
Yes,
I don't know if there's an explanation.
Of course, yes, there is.
Okay.
See, most of the time, people reason the way we do out of ignorance. We have planning schemes that guide every development within an area. If somebody, like I said, decides to build without getting approval, okay, the duty of the town planning authority under the old law, well, I won't say old because we are still using it. We are yet to implement the one that suits our purpose. If somebody decides to contravene that law by building without getting approval from the relevant town planning authority, or in Enugu here, Enugu Capital Development Authority, the first thing is that officers of that town planning authority, in fact, town planning authority first, we go and mark that structure as a contravention. In marking it as a contravention, the officer is just asking, why did you build without coming to our office? Do you have a building plan? Was it approved? Are you the owner of the land? Bring all the documents to the office so that we can look at them. If the contravenor brings all the necessary documents to the office and it was discovered that he owns the land, okay, what he has built is in line with the provisions of the scheme that serves that area, right? The only offense he committed was that he didn't come to the office to get approval. We're all human beings. The law is meant for human beings. What the Flying Authority or Capital 33 would do is to now ask him to regularize what he has done by asking him, bring all the plans. They will assess the plan. If it is in line with the provisions in the scheme that controls the area, approval is now given with penalty. But for an outsider, say, they marked it red though, they didn't demolish it again, or they have collected money. That's the Nigerian mentality.
Something similar to this is allowing a structure to go on, sometimes nearing completion or even completed, and in no distant time it will be pulled down for whatever reason. Does it mean that someone went to sleep while the structures were being erected and suddenly woke up when the structure is completed?
Well, I look at that as the fault of the fiscal development control officers, because we are all Nigerians, we are all human beings. Yes, ignorance plays some parts sometimes. Somebody might, out of ignorance, but like I said, the law doesn't know anything about ignorance, might out of ignorance begin to erect a structure. A good number of times in our private homes, because some of us really had some rough experiences in the course of our working for government. Somebody might say, this is my father's compound. I must build anything I like. You have no right to control me. So sometimes we've experienced it. He will go on with his construction and would bring in touts from all over the world to guard what he was doing. Sometimes the town planning officers would come, they would be prevented, in fact they would be chased away. They will be waiting until they will have the opportunity to strike. In 1998, let me give you this example, maybe to drive home the point. There is a street called Umaga Street, by second bus stop, Abakwa, off Nike Road.
That's Enugu.
Enugu here. On that street, a building was constructed at the center of the road. And that's the road that leads to Riverside Housing Estate, Okwanike. What residents would do would be, because you now have Umaga Street A and Umaga Street B. When you get to the front of the building, if you are approaching from Nike Road, they would hand over their luggage to somebody who should be staying behind. They would climb one of the fences. The person will hand over the bag to him or her, and then it crosses to join a continuation of the route. We saw that 1998. And it was like, what must have happened? Surprisingly too, there was a planning scheme that covered the area, Abakwanike Interim Development Order. So when we investigated further, it was established that that building was at the center of the road. And the building had stayed over 30 years.
Oh.
Oh yes. It's not a today's affair. Over 30 years. And they were residents. So because we newly resumed office, that office was newly created then, we thought of what to do. Well, as usual, we marked the building as a contravention. Behind it, another building was springing up to reduce the B part of the road. So when we marked it, they thought we were joking. And the neighborhood was I mean, the joy was unlimited, but they were still skeptical. Let's see what
If
will
it will
happen.
still go the government's way as usual.
Yeah, because they told us that when Monday Bazu was chairman, the old Anambra assessor, Anambra State Environmental Sanitation Authority. They said Monday Bazu wanted to demolish that structure. But when he got there, he was told that it was his brother-in-law who owned it. Oh. I don't know whether that was right, anyway. But the truth of the matter that the building was not demolished. So they felt we might be like that group. So we started working with the neighborhood. The first thing was how to relocate those residents in the building. It was fully occupied. So with the neighborhood, we were able to assign them to temporary accommodations for 3 months, 2 months, and so on and so forth, to ensure that the building was free of occupation. Usually the law said 21 days. We gave 21 days notice. At the end of the day, the owner could not remove it. Then by the dot of 21 days, we came with television sets. Media. Yes. We videoed the place the way it was ahead of the demolition. I wish I were to have any of them here. So, by the following day, the then permanent secretary, they were called DG then, Ministry of Lands and Urban Development. We sought for approval to get the services of security men, the police, the army, and the approval was granted. So by that morning, as early as 7:30, armed policemen had taken over the whole place. The pressmen were there. The bulldozer booked for the operation was coming up. Some of them felt it might not be possible. It might not be possible. But by 3 p.m. that day, that structure was removed. The other upcoming one was removed. And vehicles plied on that road that same day. So it's just to answer your question, that sometimes the buildings are allowed to get to a finishing level before demolition takes place. It depends on circumstances. Most of the town planning officers are hindered from carrying out the exercise.
I know that part of the assignment of the town planners is also to, help during urban growth.
Yes.
Okay. Physical growth in a particular city or town.
Yes.
And some cities, major cities in Nigeria, are not very young cities. They've been there for a while, and so growth is also expected. Enugu, for instance, gone were the days when taxis, cabs ply the streets. Now everyone is on the major road. We also did not have tricycle, keke napep at the time. We did not have motorcycle as a means of commercial transportation when I was growing up in Enugu. But now we have all of these things, even the minibuses on the road, and you find out that the roads are crowded, plus the fact that more people have cars, private vehicles. What's the role of the town planners in managing traffic congestion?
Okay, it's not just traffic congestion alone. I talked about every settlement having a master plan. If a settlement has a master plan from the onset, all provisions are made. The city does not get dangerously old, because a master plan is for a particular number of people, a particular number of houses, be it residential, commercial, whatever.
And so there won't be need for expansion, you say?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that once the limit of that master plan is met, no town continues to grow forever. The option by planning standard is that you prepare another settlement. Some of this time we talk about new town development. A new town could be found not too far away from the existing one. And of course, that new town will also have a master plan prepared for it. Once its capacity is filled, another one is prepared. So the point I'm making is that no settlement grows forever unless it is a slum.
Oh.
Of course, yes.
Okay, maybe because you've just brought it up,
Yes.
can we talk about slums?
Oh,
How
yeah.
do they spring up in cities, urban areas?
Slums spring up where there are no plans. Where you don't have a master plan guiding a city or a settlement, what you find at the end of the day is slum development. And of course, it doesn't come by accident. It comes because there are no laid down rules and regulations on how that settlement should develop, right? So somebody will just come in, since he sees a piece of land and the owner of the land is willing to sell, he buys it and begins to build whatever thing he feels is good for him because it's not regulated. What the planning schemes do, or if you like at a larger level, the master plan, is that it specifies where a particular building should be built, what road should serve it, what facilities are provided for the residents of that area. In fact, the smallest settlement in urban and regional planning is what we call the neighborhood. The neighborhood, the highest public use place that is found in a neighborhood is a primary school, right? A market, and some other things. Essentially, it will be populated by residents, people who move from that neighborhood to attend to duties somewhere else. But the truth of the matter is that the provisions are made for the roads that will serve all the houses. Provisions are made for evacuation of wastes within that neighborhood. Provisions are made for all the needs of the, remember the era of COVID-19. A lot of lessons were imported into urban and regional planning in our design of cities. That time, nobody was allowed to move out of his residence. In that case, you could die out of hunger. And that is when we began to think about mixed use. So that within a neighborhood, you can also have light industrial uses, like bakery, okay? You can also have small farms attached to the main building. That is a garden. So that even when you don't go out, you still get something to eat. You also have churches. And the essence of these churches and the other major public facilities is to ensure that not all the time you drive out with your vehicle. If you have a church within your neighborhood, you don't drive to the church every Sunday. You walk to the church, save your fuel, exercise yourself. You understand?
Now, in the case of eventual demolitions,
Yes.
for instance, in this particular case that you just reacted to,
Yeah.
which is the slum areas, who should be blamed? The town planners, the government? I mean, they looked the other way while the slums sprang up, or the persons who bought parcels of land from such slums and erected structures.
No, if you ask me straight on, it's government that should be blamed. Because government is the regulator of all human activities. In fact, after God, it is government. The one government says should stay, we stay. The one government says should leave, should leave. And that is why we have laws. Any society that is not governed by law is no society, is no human society. Because things will always go wrong. It is this government that establishes the law. With the law, it regulates the activities of human beings. And that is why we're saying that The slums, like you said, they will continue to spring up so long as we have not understood the need to implement this 1992 Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Law. That's the only law that talks about various schemes. The law talks about regional plan. In every state, there is supposed to be a regional plan for the state before you begin to talk of master plans. The regional plan specifies which areas of the state are better for this particular type of use. For instance, in Enugu State, if you go to Nsukka area, fruits, if you go to Obolafo, Opi Junction, all season, you have fruits of all types, right? Then if you go to Ogu side, where we have some forests, okay, you have a greater performance of root crops and even fruits, because there's a town called Amoli in Oguloku, Amoli and Enyimba. That's where the pineapple eaten all over the eastern part of the country is produced. So in that case, what the state government does is that with the assistance of town planning consultants and other professionals in the built environment, they will study the pattern and then begin to zone the places into the best use they can be put into, right? It is after you have done that, then you begin to think of preparing master plans for settlements. And when you prepare this master plan for settlement, you also have to bear in mind the relationship between the town you intend to set up and the nearby rural areas. You know, in economics, we also talk about the pull and push effect in migration, right? Usually people migrate from the rural areas to the urban areas. But today, the reverse is attempting to be the case. There is hunger in the city. So most people are moving back from urban to rural. But to arrest it, you usually prepare a plan that will accommodate both urban and rural. And this is where we talk about this regional development plan. So that whatever will cause people to migrate from the rural area to the urban area, you attempt at providing it to them at that level. Whatever that will cause people to begin to even reverse the trend, to begin to migrate from urban to rural, you attempt at providing those things. And that is the essence of governance.
Okay, so for this case, government should be blamed.
Of course, yes.
But what actually happens is that an administration comes up and gets interested in a particular slum settlement and begin to pull down structures, probably pay compensations to building owners and relocating residents. Apart from this, is it possible to not to go this route, but instead to erect some other structures that can enable better conditions of living and to a large extent remove the slum nature of such settlements as against pulling down the entire structures found therein?
I think what is very important in this case is that before you go into any demolition, you must have assessed the quality of structures, quality of buildings within the area concerned. The assessment is usually done by estate valuers. Before you demolish, you must have assessed, first of all, what is the value of what you are demolishing. Because once you demolish, you may not be able to adequately get the real value of what you have demolished. You understand? One aspect of leadership, good leadership, is boldness. And to me, that's what...
strength of mind.
Yes, yes, yes. That's what the current governor of Enugu State has, that some others didn't have. You must have the boldness to do good. When structures around Old Park, when they were demolished, So many people shouted. But the man simply did what others ought to have done before him. But they couldn't do it. They hadn't the boldness. But what I really don't know is whether those whose properties were within that
Were well
circle,
compensated.
yes,
Okay.
whether those buildings were assessed before demolition so as to give them adequate compensation. But remember again, I did tell you that any structure that is not approved by government through the town planning authorities is an illegal structure. And it's not
It doesn't matter how long
it doesn't matter. It's not qualified for compensation.
Oh.
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's look at current developments in terms of urban cities, urban settlements and all. There's rapid growing, developing cities all over Nigeria. And there is this case of climate change.
Okay.
I don't know if town planners have a role to play in erecting structures to align with the evolving climate change.
Oh, yes. Let me give you Lagos as an example. Lagos was the first state to domesticate the 1992 Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Law. And as we speak, that government is working seriously, hand in hand, with its employed town planners and the consultants, right? So that if you travel to Lagos, you'll be shocked to know that you still have some green spaces in that crowded city. You know, it's a one-city state. You understand? It is because the government, right from day one, understood what should be done and when it should be done. You know, the population of Lagos State is over 25 million. You know, the land mass is less than the area of our local government. But it houses over 25 million people. Why? Why hasn't there been serious crisis? It is because they are obedient to town planning laws and regulations.
And so they should be emulated.
They should be emulated.
Now, what is the appropriate thing for someone who wants to buy a space of land and erect a building? What is the appropriate thing to do?
No, in every state, we have two types of land. There is government land. There is also private land, or what they call community land. Yes. This is different from urban land and rural land. Okay? So, one, like I told you, it is first and first. There has to be a plan that will guide the conduct of people, whatever thing you want to do within that settlement. There are procedures set down by the rules guiding that development. We call it what is it now? The written scheme. The written scheme is just like a law guiding development within that area. So there has to be a plan. This plan, it takes a long process to get it approved. Because like I said, land is limited in supply. No town planner will want to waste any piece of land because you can't bring it back. Once a piece of land is built upon, unless you demolish it, otherwise you can't reuse it for some other thing else. So there has to be a plan. If anybody wants to build in such a settlement, the first option he has is to go to the town planning authority to find out, I want a plot of land though. Where can I find one that is approved by government? Is that government owned or approved by government for the community? If you don't do this, that's from where you begin to get your problem. They will advise you, yes, what type of house do you want?
At a token, of course, because I want to believe that that's where our problem.
No.
People.
They don't even collect consultancy fee for that purpose.
Okay.
It's one of the welfare duties they have to the people. You advise the people appropriately so that there will be no mistakes. They will advise you, go to this place, go to that place, go to this place. If it is government land that you want, they will direct you to the appropriate quarters where you'll be given forms to fill. At the end of the day, everything will be perfectly done for you. And then from that point, you will also know ahead of time that you must bring your plan. When an architect must have finished designing your building for you, you must bring it back to the Townland Authority for them to check whether the architect designed in line with the approved scheme. Because your house cannot face west when the road is facing east. When the road is in the east. They will check all this. Then check whether you have proposed something that will amount to no parking space within the compound after your building. That's the building coverage.
I want to believe that those compounds that do not have enough sufficient parking space were not approved by the town planning.
Many of them were not approved.
All right.
But remember my sister. Remember my sister.
Okay.
In the 60s, when we had one, several areas, coal camp, before 60, that time there were no vehicles. So there was nothing to park inside the compound. Oh. So if you go to compounds at one, some of the compounds at one presently, or coal camp, you discover that there are no parking spaces inside. They built in accordance with what was obtainable as at that time. But today, nobody can do that. One, you must provide enough air space so that people will live in the house and have enough air to breathe in. They will also have enough space to park their vehicles. You understand?
Thank you very much, Doc, for your contribution this evening. On the first segment of Politicals, Town Planner Dr. Ogbonna Chime, FNITP, is the National President, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, NITP, and he lent his voice.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.